has listed Stanley's parents, my great-grandparents. We have Stanley Sudeikis. His mom's name, Emma Bielskis, and it says birthplace on both of them, unknown specifically, but they do have Lithuania, which makes me definitely Lithuanian. So that's a whole bunch of new foods I'm gonna have to try. Well, you know. Usual occupation, unknown. Industry or business, unknown. Informant, Anne, is that Pinkle or Pukal?
Pukal, P-U-K-E-L.
Yeah. How is it not, like, you know, my grandma? How is she not the informant on this? I was raised in Overland Park, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. My parents are Dan and Kathy, Dan being my father, Kathy being my mom. On my mom's side, there's a lot of information accessible, but then, yeah, Sudeikis' side, nothing. Stanley Sudeikis, my father's father, died, so we have been told, when my dad was 2 years old. And that's all I know. That's it. Don't know how, don't know where, don't know what happened or, you know, how that affected my gram, and obviously my dad. My dad's mom, Edna, she lived with us ever since I can remember. She was a big part of all of our lives. She was tough, but I tell you what, bless her heart, if Dad was out and Mom was traveling, then Graham was running the show. The thing I'm most curious about is to find out what happened to my father's father. What do you know at this point about your dad?
Not much more than I did when I was younger.
You don't remember him at all?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, nothing at all.
Well, Dan, like, did you ever ask your mom about your dad? And
We used to ask them, we'd say, well, what was he like, or what did he look like? She got very specific. He was 6'2" and a half, and weighed 195. He said, well, when did he die? How did he die? And she used to tell us one story that's always stood out, because it's the only story she ever told. He was leaving Mass one day, fell down, it was winter, icy, and he slipped on the stairs, broke his neck. He died on the church steps of a parish in Chicago.
That's interesting.
And it may be true, for all I know, but, you know, it was all this cloak of mystery. I mean, you know nothing about his parents. I didn't even know where he was born.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to, obviously, we got to go to Chicago, Illinois. With your permission, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Anything goes.
I'm intrigued. Good luck, honey. Godspeed.
My first stop is meeting with Jean Bloom, a genealogist who I've asked to pull any records she can find regarding my grandfather, Stanley Sudeikis.
So I pulled the coroner's certificate of death.
Right? So, okay, so Stanley Sudeikis.
And your grandfather died in Cook County Hospital.
He was 32 years old. Is that right? Yeah. Manner of injury, death, skull fracture, fall on sidewalk, accident. That was always the story that my grandmother would tell my father, that he was walking out of church and slipped on the stairs and fell and broke his neck. Now, he didn't break his neck, it was actually a skull fracture, but that's pretty close.
We don't know from this where it was.
Yeah.
Or if it was at church.
Right. Okay, so birth date, born May 26, 1915, which I don't think my father knew. It has listed Stanley's parents, my great-grandparents. We have Stanley Sudeikis. His mom's name, Emma Bielskis, and it says birthplace on both of them, unknown specifically, but they do have Lithuania, which makes me definitely Lithuanian. So that's a whole bunch of new foods I'm gonna have to try. Well, you know. Usual occupation, unknown. Industry or business, unknown. Informant, Anne, is that Pinkle or Pukal?
Pukal, P-U-K-E-L.
Yeah. How is it not, like, you know, my grandma? How is she not the informant on this?
Jason Sudeikis is in Chicago, researching the cryptic story of his grandfather Stanley's demise. He just found out that his late grandfather's body was identified by a mystery woman, not his grandmother Edna.
If you look up here, here is the residence of Stanley.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, it's the same address as Miss Ann Pukal. Yeah. So he was living with Miss Pukal, or at least living in the same place.
And on this type of death certificate, it doesn't say what the relationship is.
Yeah, I don't mean to be a Pollyanna, but, you know.
What we do know is that the coroner was brought in because it was an accident. What that meant was there was a jury that was put together,
Okay.
and they hear the testimony about what went on.
It's a full-on investigation.
It's an investigation. That file should be at the medical examiner's office, and I can meet you with that file tomorrow.
Yeah, because there is a mystery here as to why the informant's name is not, Edna Sudeikis, his wife. So while Gene is looking for the coroner's report, I'm going to go meet with Phil Costello from the Circuit Court Archives. Phil has pulled any, court records naming my grandparents, Stanley and Edna, that I'm hoping, in some way will shed some light on their relationship and possibly explain why Stanley was apparently living with another woman.
Let's take a look here.
All right, at the bat, we got the plaintiff is Edna Sudeikis, my grandmother, versus Stanley P. Sudeikis, my grandfather. Entered May 15th, 1947, a year before he died.
Up here, it's a decree for separate maintenance.
What does that mean? Decree for separate maintenance?
Well, it's not really a divorce case.
It isn't.
They're not asking for a judge to break the bonds of matrimony and to dissolve the marriage.
Right.
They're asking a judge to enter an order to allow these two parties to live apart and separate.
Why does that happen?
Based on my experience, were these people Catholic?
I would assume, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's the way we were raised.
So, back in this era in the 1940s, certain judges didn't want to grant a divorce because of the Catholic Church.
Right.
I'm thinking that because of the religion angle,
Yeah.
the divorce was forbidden.
The parties hereto were lawfully joined in marriage on September 25th, 1945. That subsequently to their intermarriage, the defendant willfully deserted and absented himself from the plaintiff without any reasonable cause onto wit, so it's saying September 25th, 1945.
I think the big thing is that the date of the marriage was the date of the desertion.
Which is, it's odd.
It is odd. And maybe it was kind of like a shotgun wedding, if you will,
Right.
that they joined together in a marriage, and maybe it was prearranged that they would have that as legitimizing their children.
Right.